Good. So, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Tom Geryk. I'm from Central Hampshire Veteran Services, and Hadley being one of our 11 towns, I'm pleased to be here with you after a long time preparing for Veterans Day and everything we finally got through last week, and now we're here to learn a bit more about veterans benefits. A few things we're going to go over is the public assistance under Mass General Law, Chapter 115. We're going to go briefly through property taxes. I really want to kind of focus on the Chapter 115, the burial benefits, and then the VA pension with aid and attendance. Okay. So Chapter 115 is financial assistance for veterans, dependents, and surviving spouses. It's really for people who don't have, a lot of money to be able to keep up with the everyday bills and everything like that. That's one aspect of it. It really is it's a needs-based benefit that is really important, and a lot of people count on in the community. And it's important to get this information out there. Part of the idea is to have our veterans and their families be able to live with dignity and be able to make ends meet on a regular basis. So some of the things that it covers is assistance for food, shelter, clothing, housing supplies, medical care. And that's something that if you see your veterans agent, we figure all that out for you, and we figure out what you're eligible for. So these are some of the numbers financially that would help you qualify for the benefit. So in this case, I kind of tailored it specifically to seniors, since we're at the senior center here. And so basically over 65, disabled, fixed income. It's really, if you're retired, so if you're 62, if you're collecting Social Security, you're really considered, you're on a fixed income anyway, so you may qualify for the Chapter 115 benefit. Beyond that, one thing I kind of skipped over a little bit, it was you have to be a veteran in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 4, Section 7, Clause 43. That would mean you have 180 days of active service and released under honorable conditions, or 90 days of active service with 1 day being in a wartime period. And that would be, so obviously the dependents and the spouses would have to, that veteran service would have to basically fall under the law, just as that for the dependents to be eligible as well. So going back to the asset limit, there's a $5,000 asset limit for single applicants, and then the $9,800 asset limit is for couples. So, yes?
Do those asset limits they do not include a house or a car, for example?
Correct. So they don't include a house or a vehicle for each if it's a couple.
Okay.
So, and one thing, before I go further, one thing I'm going to say too is when I go through each section, there'll be a chance for questions once I'm through. I'm actually going to go, each segment that I go through, I'll kind of ask if there's any questions. But that was a good one to plug in right here. That was helpful. Thank you. So there's also medical-only benefits, which is still falls under the Chapter 115. It's the same benefit. It's just if your income's a little bit higher, sometimes you might just be eligible for reimbursement for your medical expenses. That includes things like prescriptions, your Part B premiums, the $135.50 that comes out of your Social Security check every month, and your supplemental insurance costs as well. So all your co-pays, what we do when we have people on is, anybody who's taken a lot of medications or anything like that, we try to have them give us a quarterly report from the quarterly statement from the pharmacy, and then we're able to reimburse them essentially on a quarterly basis for the most part. So, this is a state, Mass General Law, Chapter 115, yes. Any questions on that? Well, actually, there is something I'm going to add as part of the cash benefit there's also other things that we can help out with Chapter 115 benefits. For instance, if you had, utilities aren't cheap during the winter, fuel assistance only goes so far, and sometimes you may end up with a extreme heating bill or something like that. There's a little assistance there that we can request through Chapter 115 to help maybe catch up on arrears with that. If you have your vehicle breaks down, there's also, in some cases, we can help with vehicle repairs or home repairs even in certain cases. But really what we try to do is reach out for other resources and kind of use the Chapter 115 benefits as a last resort to help out in those situations. For instance, I had a World War II veteran who lived in an old house by himself that wasn't insulated very well, and so he's going through a lot of heat. His furnace wasn't very efficient, so we reached out for community resources through the Salvation Army after he went through his fuel assistance benefit. Salvation Army, and then also Community Action helped. Springfield Partners for Community Action helped, and this is one of my other communities. And then we also were able to get him a little help through the Chapter 115 program, and luckily he made it through the winter. So it really is helpful for people who are high risk, such as this gentleman who's well into his 90s now. So any questions on Chapter 115 benefits? Okay. Property tax exemption. So you see a pretty nice house there. So it's when you see a house like that around here, that's kind of like what it looks like paying for your taxes there, right? So sometimes you might be eligible for property tax exemption. I'm going to kind of give you the main point of it. So a veteran, the most common property tax exemption is the $400 exemption for veterans who have a service-connected disability of 10% to 90%. So you need to be legal residents of Massachusetts occupying the property as his or her domicile on January 1st of the year of the application. You need to have lived in Massachusetts for at least 6 months prior to entering the service, spouse is exempted, or have lived in Massachusetts for 5 consecutive years immediately prior to filing for property tax exemption. So I'm not going to go through the specifics on these, but these are basically the exemption amounts that you could possibly be eligible for. So in order to apply for the exemption, you do that through your assessor's office. So you would meet with your veterans agent to see, okay, what am I potentially entitled to for a property tax exemption? And then maybe we could also help you fill out the application to bring over to the assessor's office and have it processed. I can, if there's time in the end, I can go over some more specifics on that stuff, on the particular exemptions. So burial memorial benefits. So burial in VA national cemeteries, does anybody know where our national cemetery is in the state?
I go on.
No, that's a state cemetery. National cemetery is in Bourne. So it's in Cape Cod, it's in Bourne. Those are pictures of the Bourne National Cemetery there. So it's available for eligible veterans, spouses, dependents at no cost. Includes grave site, grave liner, opening and closing of the grave, a headstone or marker, and perpetual care, a burial flag, and military honors for veterans. And those who are eligible must have service beginning, well, for service beginning after September 7th, 1980 as an enlisted person, and service October 16th, 81 as an officer, must be for a minimum of 24 continuous months or the full period for which the person was called to active duty. As in the case of a reservist or National Guards person who were called to Title 10 orders. So burial in state cemeteries, very similar, but also has its own, there's a residency requirement that goes along with it. So the services, the veteran needs to be discharged under honorable conditions or served 20 years in the National Guard or Reserve and is eligible for a military pension. And for years, actually, not to go too far off, but the Guard and Reserve members who weren't called up on active duty orders weren't considered legally a veteran in Massachusetts. And that recent legislation changed that. So that's a good thing. We finally recognized our retirees who were ready to go but didn't necessarily get called up. Any member of the armed forces who dies on active duty and whose HR is home of reference, that's another military acronym there, HOR, and a home of reference is Massachusetts. The residence required, just went over it, home of reference is on the discharge is Massachusetts when they enter the service, or the veteran resided in Massachusetts at least one day after they were discharged, or the veteran was a resident of Massachusetts at the time of his or her death. So eligible family members would include spouses, widows, and widowers who were legally married at the time of death, surviving spouse of a veteran who remarried to a non-veteran and whose death occurred on or after January 1st, 2000, unmarried child under 21 or under 24 and was going to school full-time at an approved educational institution, unmarried child who was physically or mentally disabled before 21 or before 24 with the educational provision, same as above. And just to kind of back up a little bit, for the national cemeteries, they have the same provisions for the dependent children as well. The only difference is instead of the child being 24 there, it's limited to 23 with the educational provision. Okay. VA burial allowance and reimbursement. So the VA will pay a burial and funeral allowance up to $2,000 for a veteran who died of service-connected injuries. And one point I want to make on that is, if a veteran dies of the service-connected injury and you are a surviving spouse, you want to make sure that service-connected condition is on the death certificate. So that will help in this case, and also if that person is putting in for a benefit known as the Dependency Indemnity Compensation benefit through the VA. I won't get into that right now, but that's a benefit that widows and widowers would be eligible for if their spouse died of a service-connected condition in most cases. The VA will pay up to $300 for veterans who died from a non-service connected injury but was eligible to receive the pension or compensation. They'll pay $762 when the death occurs at a VA or VA contracted nursing home or state veterans nursing home, such as the Soldiers Home. They will pay a burial allowance up to $2,000 if the veteran's death is service-connected. In such cases, the person who bore the veteran's burial expenses may claim the reimbursement. So in some cases, whoever paid for the services, it really doesn't matter who. We have certain people who have been on Chapter 115 who have been indigent and didn't have any money to pay for their services, so then the town would cover the services and then the town puts in for the reimbursement. They get that back from the VA. Plot allowance. The VA will pay up to $762 when a veteran is buried in a cemetery not under U.S. government jurisdiction. The veteran was discharged, if the veteran was discharged because of a service-connected disability, or the veteran was receiving pension or compensation, or would have been if they weren't already receiving military retired pay, or if the veteran passed away in a VA facility. Headstones, markers, and medallions. So these are specific to private cemeteries. If you don't want to be buried in a state cemetery or national cemetery, the VA will provide a headstone marker or a medallion. So for veterans or service members buried in private cemeteries whose death occurred on or after November 1st, 90, the VA may furnish a headstone marker even if the grave is already marked with a private one. For deaths that prior to that, that's when the deceased veteran would be entitled to a medallion to affix to the stone that's already there. Spouses and dependent children are eligible for a government headstone or marker only if they're buried in a national or state veteran cemetery. So those are the markers that are automatically kind of provided with the burial services from those the state and federal cemeteries. The in memory of markers are provided for veterans whose remains have not been recovered or identified. They're possibly buried at sea, maybe donated their body to science, or they were cremated and their ashes were scattered. So these are some of the different markers that you can get. The bottom right, those are the medallions that go on the stone, different sizes, because there's some stones have a lot of writing on them. You can't really fit a whole lot in there, so they make the smaller ones for those stones. The most common one, I kind of have them in order of the most common that we get requests for, is the bronze plaque that's up in the top left corner that goes at the base of the stone, or it goes by itself and it's mounted in a, basically it has a concrete base that you have to mount it on. Those are really nice. And then obviously right next to it is the headstone. The bottom left is just the granite marker that's set at either the base of the headstone or on its own. And basically I sent out a couple, if anybody's planning on being buried in a private cemetery, one thing that I suggest is grab one of these application forms and fill out what you want on there, because there's been so many times where I meet with a widow of a veteran or the surviving dependents or children of veterans that oh, I don't know what he would have wanted, or this or that. So I always recommend you fill one out and just keep it with your final papers is a good idea. That way there's no question. I had to kind of talk a few widows through the process a few times, and you know, I'm always happy to help, but it's nice to be prepared and have these things set ahead of time. The form may change, but the information will always pretty much be the same. Some of the things that you can do. Oh, one thing you can do on these forms too is you can order a presidential memorial certificate that is signed by whatever president is in office at the time. So depending on whatever your political view is, you may want to order one now or order one when a new president comes along. You can't pick your president. So that's what I always warn anybody who's putting in for one of these. So. And I've done that through both recent administrations, so there's no political views there. You can also pick a religious symbol to put on your plaque, such as the cross or the Star of David. There's a whole list of them on the application. It's really a lot of options there. So let me get over here. So basically, the headstones and markers must be inscribed with the name of the deceased, the branch of service, and the year of birth and year of death of the veteran. There is an option to have additional inscriptions on there, such as beloved husband, father, or grandfather, but those are the ones that are required to have for inscriptions. Any questions? Pretty straightforward, right? All right. So we're going to get into talking about the VA pension with aid and attendance. So before I get into the aid and attendance, I'll kind of preface it by talking about the basic pension. The basic pension is a needs-based benefit that the VA gives out to veterans or qualifying dependents that really don't have a whole lot of money, and it maxes out at the current rate, which will change in probably 2 weeks from now. Is $1,127 a month for a veteran, and it's $756 a month for a dependent, which, I mean, if you qualify for that, then I think SSI is actually $771, which you would probably qualify for that as well. So I don't know how many dependent basic pensions are out there now, but I'm sure there's some. So the way it works is the pension will bring you up to that amount. So if your Social Security is, if you're the veteran, your Social Security is $927 a month, the VA will give you an extra $200 a month to bring you up to $1,127 a month. So it's based on whatever income you have that's below that amount, they bring you up to the amount that you're entitled to by the pension. So that's the basic pension. The pension with aid and attendance. The aid and attendance is a well, let me keep the slideshow going here. I'll get to that point. So the aid and attendance for veteran spouses and dependents who are housebound or require the aid and attendance of another person. The DD-214 requirements. So your discharge has to be other than dishonorable. Veterans must have at least 90 days of active duty service, including 1 day during a wartime period. If the active duty service occurred after 1980, you would have to serve at least 24 months or the full period that you were called up. So these are the wartime periods that they're referring to for World War II, Korean War, and Vietnam, Gulf War. So the Gulf War through the current OEF, OIF operations, it's kind of all bunched into the same area. It hasn't been ended yet. It's all considered part of the Gulf War era. So eligibility requirements, 65 or older, limited or no income. Total permanently disabled or resident in nursing home, assisted living, receiving skilled nursing care, on Social Security, disability, or receiving supplemental Social Security income. So you need to, in order to qualify, the VA needs to determine that you need assistance with 2 or more of your ADLs. And your activities of daily living, ADLs. And basically there's 6 major ADLs. And it's basically eating, bathing, dressing, transferring, walking basically, toileting, and continence. So those, any combination of 2 of those, a lot of times it's going to be more than the 2. Obviously, if you're in the assisted living or the nursing home, you know, that pretty much gets you in there without having to, pretty much gets you the benefit without having to prove too much of what your ADLs are. But there's, part of the application process is having the doctor fill out a form and show your need for the additional aid and attendance. Yes?
Would someone in a nursing home be eligible for aid and attendance?
Yes, absolutely.
In addition, so they have 24-hour nursing care in a nursing home, but why would they need that in a nursing home?
Oh, in a nursing home, so what they would get is $90 a month. So if that's covered under, say, if their care is covered under Mass Health or something like that, I believe the state gets a portion of the aid and attendance. I'm not exactly sure on that, but the veteran or dependent would get $90 a month from the VA for even though all their expenses are covered.
Right. I think I'm misunderstanding aid and attendance. It is not home care?
So it can be used for home care. So it is money. It is money that's applied to your care. So and it supplements the cost of your care basically. So I'm going to get into that a little bit. So in order to qualify, it's also needs based. So it's based on your essentially your net worth and your assets. The VA has a whole formula to figure out whether you meet the asset limit and the net worth. So, or actually to figure out what level you get the benefit at. The current asset limit is $127,061, and that excludes the house and 1 vehicle. If the aid and attendance benefits being applied to services going to the home. Obviously, if you're living in a assisted living or a nursing home, then if you still own a house, it's not your primary residence, then it's an asset. There is a 3-year look-back period now, and so basically, in the past, people were able to kind of move some of their assets into an irrevocable trust and not have that looked at. Now there's a 3-year look-back period. And what happens is the VA will look at whatever assets were transferred in whatever way, and there'll be a penalty period that you're not eligible for the benefit, because the way they're looking at it is you could have used that money towards your care. So that's kind of how that works. The penalty period can only be up to 5 years. And it really, you know, it applies to situations essentially where if someone has, you know, $500,000 in the bank and they just transferred it to their kids, the VA is going to notice that.
Yeah, and that's how.
Right. So these are the considerations. I kind of just started going over asset convertibility. This is essentially considerations that the VA will make when they're considering your assets as well. The convertibility, the ability to dispose of assets as limited by law. So that's going into the 3-year look-back period. Essentially, it's speaking to that. So this is a little bit, it's not as clear. I kind of use these slides from a friend. The life expectancy and number of dependents. So essentially, however they calculate the benefit, you know, if you're 98 years old and you're in hospice and you're probably not going to qualify for a whole lot of benefits depending on what your assets are, but essentially, it takes so long for these benefits to go through, that wouldn't even be a legitimate scenario. Future asset depletion of medical expenses. So what that's speaking to is, okay, so you have the $127,000 in the bank. How long is it going to take you to go through that along with your income? And what will they need to give you to help supplement that to make sure they can try to help you get to the end, make it through to the end of your life, essentially, and be able to cover all your expenses. I'm not going to get into this. This kind of, let's see. All right, this is the max annual benefit. So these are the different categories. Surviving spouse of the veteran, $14,509. Veteran with no spouse or dependents is $22,577, and then it kind of goes down from there. Married veteran requires care, $26,766, and then we go to these are the monthly amounts, and these amounts are based on the rates that were set as of December 1st, 2018. So they'll be increased as of a couple weeks from now. It should be December 1st, 2019, and they go up. These benefits go up at the same rate as Social Security does. So I believe this year it's 1.6%. The timeline. So no one can guarantee if you're going to be, if you're going to qualify for the benefit or for how much. That gets adjudicated at the VA level, and you know, for us helping you with the applications, we get that question a lot. When is it going to go through, and how much is it going to be for? We can't really predict that sort of thing. The process averages about 10 months, but it pays retroactively. So if you're working with if you're at home, you're working with services coming to the house, a lot of them kind of understand that the benefit's going through, and they kind of give you a little leeway. Or if you're in an assisted living facility, they oftentimes will kind of let things slide a little bit to wait for that retroactive pay to come in. So they're pretty well aware of how the process works and how long it takes. And essentially, if there's any issues there, that's when you want to see your veteran service officer anyways. probably step in and help out. So, questions? No? All right, well, that covers those items there. There's also one other thing I wanted to bring up that I didn't have in the slideshow, is there's different bonuses for, I want to go over the different state bonuses that are available. There's a do we have any, we don't have anybody from World War II here, right? Oh boy, thank you for your service. That's right, I remember that. So, did we ever look in to see if you got your bonus? We'll have to check that out. So that's service between September 16th, 1940 and July 25th, 47. 1 to 6 months of service would be $100. 6 months within the U.S. would be $200, or overseas would be $300. Korea bonus goes from June 25th, 1950 to January 31st, 55. That's so 90 days within the U.S. is $100, or 6 months would be $200, or overseas would be $300. The Vietnam bonus goes from its service between July 1st, 58 to May 17th, 75. That's, you have 6 months service. Other than in Vietnam, that's $250. If you were in country in Vietnam, that would be $300. Then, was there anybody here who was in the Gulf War at all? Okay. Well, nobody here, but maybe someone will get this information. So the Gulf War bonus is paid for service between August 2nd of 1990 to April 10th of 91. And it's for active duty service in the Gulf War area for those who are in receipt of the Southwest Asia Service Medal. It's a $500 bonus. Active duty in support of the war, other than in the Gulf, would be a $300 bonus. And then finally, the welcome home bonus, and that was a bonus that I received that I was very appreciative when I got it. That was for service between September 11th, 01 to current day. So it's basically your first deployment to Iraq or Afghanistan would be $1,000. First continuous 6-month deployment or stateside service would be $500, and then any subsequent 6-month deployments overseas would be $250. So those are the bonuses that the state gives out. And actually, you know, we're very fortunate that Massachusetts is probably, I wouldn't say probably, with the benefits that the state benefits I'm aware of that the states around the country give, that Massachusetts is probably the most generous with their veterans for sure, and their dependents. So, you know, we're all very fortunate to be here. So that pretty much does it for me. That concludes what I'm going to be covering today.
When you're here, your office hours?
Oh yeah, I'm here every Wednesday from 2 to 4. So Wednesdays 2 to 4. I have my business card up here for anybody who wants it. Basically, you know, this was just scratching the surface of so many different benefits and programs that there are out there. So just come by, have a chat, and I'll tell you, there's been a lot of people that I've talked to that don't realize they're entitled to anything. They come by and I rattle off 2 or 3 things that they're entitled to, and they're like, whoa, I had no idea, you know. And a lot of that especially is the surviving spouses that don't realize that they're eligible for veterans benefits. So, you know, anybody who knows a surviving spouse who was married to a veteran, definitely suggest that they contact their veteran service office for sure. So,
Where is your office?
our main office is in Northampton in Memorial Hall on Main Street, right next to the Academy of Music.
I was thinking,
What is here?
it's not in Boston.
And our Hadley office is right in this building. So this is where we are from 2 to 4 every Wednesday. This is where I come.
Should people make appointments directly with you, or do they do that with reception?
The best way to make appointments would be to call the Northampton office at 587-1299.
Where, is there a card for a number on?
I do. I have cards up here. I'll make sure everybody gets one. And actually, just to bring this up again, this is the information here. This is the first slide of my show here. This is where all our. First, I gotta go. I'm used to a Mac, so this is can be tricky for me. This is the one here. So that's my card. It looks a little tea-stained on there, even though it actually is a clean card. I kind of like I like the character of it. It shows that I've been around for a while. No, I do have some nice cards up here that you're welcome to take, and you can definitely call for an appointment or just show up on a Wednesday, and someone should be here.
So walk-in is fine?
Walk-in is fine, yep.
You might have to wait if you're talking to somebody else.
It's actually, yes, and that's what happens sometimes. If you walk in, you're taking that chance that you have to wait. The other downfall to walking in sometimes is maybe you need some documents that you didn't necessarily bring that you could have known ahead of time to bring.
Right.
So it is good to make an appointment, but either way, it's good to just make that connection. Definitely come in and speak to the Veteran Service Officer for sure. So, all right, thank you, everybody. Thanks.
While you're seated in listening mode, I just want to tack on one thing that I was reminded of when Tom was talking about a tax benefit for veterans, and that is that there's a senior tax work-off program in the town of Hadley, and the application deadline is December 1st. You should call me to get the income eligibility guidelines so that you don't waste your time on an application if you're not eligible, and it is only for homeowners, but there are 5 different jobs throughout the city, the town, that are available. And I think that the work requirement is something like 41 hours within the calendar year of 2020. And for that, you have $500 reduced from your taxes. So that's a special tax program for people 60 and over in this town, and you can give me a call to see if you might be eligible if you have any interest in that. The deadline is December 1st for the application, so you should call me really soon if you're interested.
Is there one for veterans in Hadley? Like we have in other towns?
I don't know about that. Is there a Hadley Veterans tax program? Tax exemption program?
I don't believe
I don't think there is yet.
adopted that program yet, but I definitely think it's something that could be coming down the line. So I'm sure in the future, we'll speak a little bit more to that.
It's nothing to do with veterans. It's for anyone
Yeah.
who's a homeowner, 60 and over.
Do we have any Vietnam veterans here? Okay, I have a book for you guys, and I have more in the truck. So this was from, I believe, where did this come from? DVS?
No, that actually came from Bilingual Veterans of America is the receiver of all of the books.
Oh, okay.
And they're distributing them.
Oh, all right. So this is basically a token of thanks for our Vietnam vets, and it's a commemoration. It's the Vietnam War 50th commemoration, A Time to Honor. So it's a nice book. I actually went through with another veteran that I gave one to the other day, and he actually found his ship in the book, which is pretty cool. And it comes, in the end, it comes with a 68-minute DVD as well. So I have some more. So if you're a Vietnam vet, stick around. I'll give this to one of you, and then I have some more in the truck that I'll grab.
Has anyone been to the VA hospital over in Northampton?
Yes.
Yeah, I just mentioned it's a pretty good one, and it's not too far from us. If anybody hasn't taken advantage of it, then you should get over there.
Absolutely.
Like we said also, there are a lot of discounts in the community.
Yeah.
Really.
You know, a lot of Veterans ID. Probably at least one of you here is kind of interested in that. But I always suggest the best way to get your Veterans ID is bring your DD-214 to the registry with you and get it put on your license. That way, you know, when you go for your Home Depot discount or anything like that, then you're ready to go.
Half of the time they don't ask,
Yeah, well,
They know you.
yeah.
but I